What if you embarked on a winter road trip, eager to reunite with a loved one, only to find yourself enveloped by a snowstorm that turns the familiar into a haunting nightmare? In those desolate moments, a wrong turn can lead to unexpected terror. Imagine checking into a cheap motel where friendly faces might hide sinister intentions. What if a stranger's advice puts you in grave danger? Tonight we explore true horror stories from the road, tales that reveal how easily a journey can slip into darkness, waiting for the unsuspecting to become its next victim. But before we delve into tonight's terrifying tales, a huge shout out to all of you. Your support fuels this channel and keeps the nightmares coming. If our eerie stories captivate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a chilling episode. And if you want to help us grow and keep the fear alive, share our videos, drop a comment, or explore our support options on Patreon or Ko-fi. Every bit of support helps us bring you the best spine-tingling content. Thank you for joining us on this dark journey. Now let's embrace the shadows together. It was the most horrific, haunting night of my life, and even now, just thinking about it, sends shivers down my spine. At 28 years old, I usually feel pretty capable of handling whatever life throws at me, but this experience shattered that sense of security. My boyfriend Todd lives in a different state, and we take turns visiting each other, but I often find myself driving to him more frequently since he has his own place and I still share an apartment with my sister. This particular trip was during winter break, and as a teacher, I had a whole week free. I packed up my things and set off in my aging 2009 Hyundai Sonata, which I'd bought from my sister. The roads were slick with snow, and I was well aware that my car wasn't exactly built for driving in blizzard conditions. As I drove further north, the snow began to fall harder, and blizzard warnings loomed ominously over me. Todd and I had agreed that it would be best for me to leave that night to beat the worst of the storm, but as I continued, it became clear I'd need to find a place to stay. After stopping at a small diner for a quick sandwich and coffee, the waitress, concerned about the worsening weather, suggested a few nearby hotels and motels. Just as she walked away, a man at the bar spun around and said, "There's a motel right up the road." He introduced himself as Toby and assured me it was just 5 minutes away. He mentioned it was nice and cheap, a perfect place for a quick night's rest before I continued my journey. While I appreciated his help, I found it odd that he seemed to be eavesdropping on my conversation. Who goes to a diner just to drink? I told him my name was Michelle, and after a brief chat, I made my way back outside, feeling the weight of the accumulating snow on my shoulders. I drove slowly to the motel, my nerves fraying with each passing moment. Arriving at the motel, I noted a few cars in the lot. It looked cheap, but functional. I checked in for around $50, and the clerk handed me a key to one of the downstairs rooms. It was a tiny space with tacky wallpaper, a queen-sized bed, and a red carpet. It wasn't luxurious, but it would suffice for one night. I attempted to FaceTime Todd, but found there was no reception. The motel did have Wi-Fi, but I had to return to the front desk for the password. As I walked to the front desk, I noticed a new car parked nearby with someone inside. I dismissed it. After all, who really looks at strangers? The clerk pointed me to the Wi-Fi sign, and I entered the password, finally connecting. I hurried back to my room, locked the door, and tried FaceTiming Todd again. The connection was terrible, his face froze every few seconds, and the audio was choppy. We decided to text instead, but then I heard something. Soft noises coming from the bathroom. I froze, heart racing, realizing I couldn't recall if I'd closed the bathroom door before leaving. I texted Todd, panicking as I realized I hadn't locked my motel room door when I rushed out. He asked if the door locks by itself. I didn't think it did, and my mind raced through all the possibilities. Gathering my courage, I slipped on my shoes and approached the door. As I opened it, I was hit with a chilling sight, an extra set of footprints in the snow leading from that strange car to my door. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Whoever had been in that car was now here. I barely stifled a scream as I closed the door and ran to the front desk, breathless and trembling. I told the clerk there was someone in my room, and to my dismay, he didn't seem eager to help. Instead of calling the police, he spoke in a language I couldn't understand, making me feel even more isolated and vulnerable. When I glanced back through the glass, my blood ran cold as I saw the door to my room open, and there was Toby from the diner walking to his car. Our eyes met for a split second before he climbed in and drove off into the darkness. Not long after, another man arrived, a large, silent figure who spoke no English. They exchanged words I couldn't decipher, and the clerk finally offered me a different room, free of charge. I didn't feel safe, but what choice did I have? I took the key, my heart still racing, and the two men helped me move my things to the new room. Todd offered to come to me, but I told him not to. The roads were treacherous, and I was afraid for him to navigate the snowy night. When morning came, I found the street somewhat plowed, enough to continue my drive to Todd's place. However, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the motel clerk had deliberately chosen not to call the authorities, likely to avoid any negative attention to his establishment. I called the diner later to warn them about Toby, but I knew I wouldn't easily shake the fear he instilled in me. After that night, my trust in strangers shattered, leaving me with an unsettling sense of vulnerability that lingered long after the incident. This chilling experience happened during a road trip I was taking after visiting family for the holidays. Normally, I opt for flights over long drives, but this year, the ticket prices skyrocketed over $1,000 for a round trip to a destination just a few states away. Reluctantly, I decided to drive, planning to reach home a few days before returning to work. Just as I was about to leave, a snowstorm rolled in, forcing me to delay my departure by 2 extra days. Finally, I set out on the road, and to my relief, the highways were mostly empty. The holiday rush had faded, leaving me with quiet, desolate stretches of road. Most of my journey took me through remote areas, far from major cities. While the solitude was peaceful, my main challenge was staying awake and fighting off the boredom. The first 8 hours went by surprisingly smoothly. Despite my fatigue, the snow-covered roads kept me alert and focused. As the clock neared 10 p.m., I had a hotel booked just 2 hours ahead. That's when I noticed headlights approaching in my rearview mirror, the first sign of life on the road in over an hour. The lights grew larger rapidly, revealing a large van that seemed to be speeding toward me. Since it was a one-lane road, I had nowhere to pull over. I figured the driver would pass me, but to my shock, the van matched my speed and began trailing closely behind me. For nearly 10 minutes, I felt a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. The van was so close that I couldn't even see its front bumper or license plate in my mirror. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, but as the seconds ticked by, the feeling of being stalked intensified. Just when I thought it couldn't get any more unnerving, an exit for a gas station appeared, and I decided to take it, hoping to create some space between us. To my dismay, the van followed me off the highway and pulled into the gas station right behind me. I parked at one of the pumps, my heart racing as I glanced around. The gas station was dimly lit with a closed sign hanging from the door. The surrounding area was completely deserted. No houses, no buildings, just an expanse of snow and darkness. As I began to fill up my tank, I noticed the man from the van stepping out to do the same. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept glancing at him, trying to discern his intentions. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but part of me hesitated, wondering if I was overreacting. After all, it was the only gas station for miles, and it wasn't unreasonable for him to stop for fuel too. Then, just as I was about to convince myself it was all in my head, I heard the unmistakable sound of the van's back door sliding open. An icy chill ran down my spine, and a sense of impending danger washed over me. My gut instinct kicked in, urging me to get out of there. Without a second thought, I pulled the pump from my car and jumped inside, locking the doors just as 3 men burst from the shadows, sprinting toward me from the rear of the van. Adrenaline surged through my veins and I dropped the pump, heart pounding as I fumbled for my keys. I could hear their footsteps pounding against the pavement, each step echoing my rising panic. I managed to slam the car door shut and lock it just in time. One of the men grabbed the handle, yanking on it with all his might, but I was already cranking the engine. My hands trembled as I struggled to get the car started. The 3 men raced around the vehicle, trying each door in a desperate attempt to get inside. In that terrifying moment, I felt like I was in a nightmare. But just as quickly as they had appeared, the men suddenly turned and sprinted back to their van. With my heart racing and the engine finally roaring to life, I slammed my foot on the gas and pulled away, my eyes wide with fear as I glanced in the rearview mirror. I watched as the van sped off in the opposite direction, disappearing into the night. Shaken, I dialed the police, reporting what had just happened, but I never received any updates. It was clear they were up to no good, attempting to abduct someone under the cloak of darkness on that isolated stretch of highway. What terrified me most was how confident and methodical they seemed. As soon as they realized I had locked myself in my car and that their plan had unraveled, they fled without hesitation. It was as if they had orchestrated similar encounters before, their movements eerily coordinated. What could have happened if they had succeeded? I shudder to think about it. I urge everyone to heed my warning. Trust your instincts, stay aware of your surroundings, and never take your safety for granted, especially in desolate areas. You may not be as lucky as I was to escape unharmed. In December 2015, I embarked on a long journey from the northern part of the country to the south, navigating the heart of the Midwest as a university student in my early 20s. It was late at night, around 11:30 p.m., and I was driving along I-65 in Kentucky, still about an hour away from my planned stop for the night. The highway was unsettlingly deserted. I hadn't seen another vehicle for quite some time. This stretch of Interstate 65 was a 6-lane, divided highway located just south of Mammoth Cave National Park and northeast of Bowling Green. As I drove, I was focused on adjusting the music on my phone, trying to find a track that would help keep me alert. Suddenly I noticed an 18-wheeler creeping up behind me in the rearview mirror. I instinctively paused what I was doing, setting my phone down to let the truck pass. Instead of overtaking me, however, it matched my speed and hovered alongside my car. My heart began to race as the driver switched on a spotlight mounted on the side of the truck, directing a harsh beam of light right into my car and illuminating my face. Confusion quickly morphed into unease. I had never encountered a truck behaving in such a manner before. The driver kept the light trained on me for what felt like an eternity, and I found myself gripping the steering wheel tightly, eyes fixed straight ahead, trying to remain calm. The isolation of the highway only amplified my anxiety. After what seemed like a long minute, the driver finally turned off the light and moved ahead, transitioning into the right lane in front of me. Relieved, yet still unsettled, I decided to slow down even more and shifted into the left lane, hoping to put some distance between myself and the intimidating rig. But as soon as I changed lanes, the truck mirrored my actions sliding into the middle lane to stay parallel with me. Once again, the spotlight flicked back on, this time shining directly into the passenger side of my vehicle. Panic set in. It was clear that this truck driver was intentionally following me, and their behavior was growing increasingly menacing. I kept my gaze straight ahead, convinced that looking over at the driver would only escalate my fear. As the truck shifted ahead into the leftmost lane, I realized I needed to take decisive action. I quickly changed lanes again, moving back to the rightmost lane and accelerating to regain some speed. By this time, I was traveling at about 70 to 75 miles per hour, but I noticed the truck closing the distance again, moving into the lane next to mine and speeding up to match my pace. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I decided I had to get away from this terrifying situation. I floored the accelerator, pushing my speed up to 90 miles per hour, the fastest I had ever driven in my life. I managed to create a gap between us, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart sank. The massive orange tractor-trailer was gaining on me rapidly, the highway lights illuminating its menacing bulk. No matter how hard I pressed on the gas, the truck continued to close in, pulling beside me once again and reactivating that dreadful spotlight. In that moment, I knew I had to rely on the maneuverability of my smaller car. With a quick decision, I slammed on my brakes, dropping back behind the truck as I shifted into the middle lane. The truck moved over to the right lane and I settled into its blind spot, hoping to remain unseen. As we approached an exit sign, a plan began to form in my mind. I decided I would wait until the very last moment to make my escape. I stayed tucked behind the truck, watching the road ahead intently. When we reached the exit, I waited until the truck had passed the point where the exit split away before I darted out from behind it, veering onto the exit ramp with my heart pounding. Shaken, I pulled into a Wendy's just off the interstate, still on edge and wondering how far I should go to ensure I was safe from the truck. After parking, I got out to inspect my vehicle, checking for any signs of damage or whether the driver had been trying to warn me about something. Fortunately, everything appeared fine. I lingered inside the Wendy's for a while, watching the parking lot and the road to make sure the truck had indeed disappeared. After a little while, I felt ready to get back on the interstate and continue my journey. But when the break ended and I prepared to drive back to school, I made a firm decision. I would avoid I-65 altogether in the future. It was a late Saturday night in early November when I found myself driving home from a friend's party, the kind where you laugh too loudly and the world feels warm and friendly. I had a 3-hour drive ahead of me through winding country roads, and I was eager to get back to the comfort of my own bed. The radio hummed softly, the familiar songs drifting in and out as I navigated the dark stretches of highway, flanked by dense forests on either side. The first hour passed uneventfully. I sipped on a half-finished coffee to keep myself alert, the warmth spreading through me in the chilly car. As the miles stretched on, the snow began to fall lightly, dusting the asphalt in a thin layer that glistened under the headlights. I switched on my high beams, feeling the first pangs of tiredness creep in. Around 2 in the morning, I turned onto a less traveled road, a shortcut I'd discovered during previous late-night drives. It was a scenic route, especially in the daytime, but at night the trees loomed over me like dark sentinels, creating an oppressive feeling that weighed heavily in the silence. That's when I noticed the car behind me. At first, I thought nothing of it, a distant pair of headlights following my path. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw that the car was unusually close, tailgating me despite the empty road ahead. I felt a spike of unease. My foot instinctively pressed down on the gas and I accelerated, hoping to put some distance between us. The car matched my speed. My heart began to race as a sense of dread washed over me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. I considered pulling over to let them pass, but the thought of stopping made my stomach turn. Instead, I pressed onward, trying to maintain my composure. As the road twisted and turned, I glanced back again. The car was still there, its headlights glaring like a predator's eyes in the dark. Panic set in, and I decided to take a sharp left onto an even narrower road that led deeper into the woods. Surely I thought they wouldn't follow me here. But they did. The headlights remained fixed behind me, illuminating the trees that seemed to close in with every turn I took. My mind raced with possibilities. Was I being followed? Or was it all in my head? My heart thudded loudly in my chest, and I felt a cold sweat forming on my brow. I took another sharp turn, hoping to lose them, but the car's presence felt like a dark shadow looming ever closer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted a small clearing up ahead with an old, abandoned gas station, its neon sign flickering weakly. I pulled in, heart pounding, and quickly switched off my headlights, the sudden darkness swallowing me whole. I peered through the windshield, waiting for the other car to pass by. But it didn't. Instead, the car slowed down and pulled into the gas station behind me. My breath hitched as I watched a figure step out, shrouded in shadow. They moved slowly, almost deliberately, towards my car. I felt frozen in place, panic gripping me as I frantically searched for my phone to call for help. Just then, the figure stepped into the light cast by the gas station's flickering sign, and I felt a chill shoot down my spine. It was a man, disheveled and wild-eyed, with unkempt hair and clothes that looked torn. He glanced around, scanning the area, before turning his gaze towards my car. My heart raced as I pressed myself into the seat, praying he wouldn't notice me. He walked closer, his movements jerky and erratic. I could hear the crunch of gravel beneath his feet, each step amplifying my dread. I felt trapped, knowing I had to make a decision. Should I risk starting the car and making a run for it, or stay hidden and hope he left? Just then, a loud noise shattered the stillness, a gunshot echoing through the night, followed by a scream. My heart leapt into my throat as I instinctively turned to look out the window. In the distance, I saw a pair of headlights approaching rapidly. The man turned, panic flashing across his face, and he bolted into the woods. I didn't hesitate. I started the car and slammed my foot on the gas, tearing out of the gas station. As I sped down the road, I glanced back to see the approaching car, a police cruiser, lights flashing. Relief washed over me as I continued to drive, the sound of sirens fading into the night. When I finally arrived home, I sat in my driveway trembling. The adrenaline slowly ebbed away, leaving me exhausted and shaken. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me, the terror of that man lingering in my mind. It was a night that would haunt me, a reminder of how quickly safety can turn to fear and how a simple drive home can lead into the depths of darkness. If you've encountered a terrifying event or have a spine-chilling horror story to share, we at Eerie Shadows want to hear from you. Share your experiences with us and let's uncover the mysteries lurking in the eerie shadows together. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more eerie tales and spine-chilling stories like this one.